Hi, Dirty Avocado here. I actually shot this video a couple times already, but the footage ended up being terrible, so here we are. Third time's the charm. So here is my backpack, and this is actually Palante's earlier version of their current V2, and it's called the Simple Pack. And so I wanted to make this video to let you guys know what I think about the pack, my thoughts on ultralight gear, and share with you a few tips and tricks when backpacking with a pack that doesn't have a hip belt. I'm also going to answer some questions I got on my last Instagram post regarding this pack throughout the video. So a little quick story, and this actually answers the first question, which is, how did I transition from a pack with a hip belt to one without? So rewind back several years to 2012 when I got my very first pack. This was an Osprey 65-liter pack. It weighed 5 pounds, I think, the pack itself. It had a massive hip belt, and overall this pack ended up being pretty terrible for me at the time. Actually, if you go back 2 years before that, I got into an accident where I was training for a bike tour. I fell off onto pavement, broke one of my vertebrae in my low back. The bone ended up fusing naturally over time, but my back has never really been the same. So here I am backpacking with this really heavy pack, going up mountains and having way too much stuff inside the pack. You can imagine that I was not comfortable. Actually, I was in a lot of pain. Yeah. So fast forward a few years to 2016 when I decided that I wanted to thru-hike the John Muir Trail. I knew that I needed to get a new pack. So I ended up getting a Deuter 45-liter pack. And it was a huge improvement overall in comfort. By this time, I'd also figured out what base weight was. And so base weight is the weight of all your gear, including your pack, but minus food and water. And I believe I was right around 12 to 15 pounds. So at this weight and with this new pack, there was definitely a lot less strain on my low back. Overall, I felt a lot better than I did before. And so this was pretty exciting for me because the potential of having an even lower base weight would mean an even more enjoyable experience for me. So then when I got home from the John Muir Trail, I almost immediately knew that I wanted to hike the Pacific Crest Trail. I started researching a little bit more and realized that for a trail that long, so the PCT is 2,600 miles, that I would need an even lighter pack. And so I ended up getting the Hyperlight 2400, which is a crazy light pack compared to the ones that I had before. I also managed to get my base weight under 10 pounds. So a base weight under 10 pounds means ultralight. However, this all kind of went out the window the day before the start of my thru hike because I panicked and overpacked, and I don't want to tell you exactly what my entire weight was at the time because it's pretty embarrassing, but it was bad. And so even though I was pretty blissed out on the fact that I was hiking the PCT and logistics were working out great and everything, my body was very miserable those first few days. I had to very quickly get rid of a lot of things. Got rid of extra clothing, excess toiletries, and just kind of became more aware of how much food and water I was carrying. When this happened and I became more in tune with what I actually needed as a thru hiker, the pack was actually pretty good and I was pretty content with it. I did have to make a few adjustments though. I had to remove the aluminum stays that act as the frame of the pack because they were digging into my low back. I also had to purchase a pocket that I attached to the shoulder strap of the pack so I could put my phone. I also had to adjust the hip belt like every, I don't know, like I started to notice that it was kind of rubbing on my hip bones and creating slight bruising. Eventually that area became used to it, so it wasn't painful, but it was definitely a thing. So now fast forward through the rest of the desert with this pack, through the Sierra, Northern California, and into mid-Oregon when I got off trail briefly to attend trail days where a bunch of gear companies get together and they showcase, sell their gear, and then a bunch of hikers go to the event to try on the gear and just hang out. That's where I met one of the owners of Palante packs, John Z. And up until that point, I had heard a lot about Palante, and it seemed like everyone wanted one at the time. So I got to chat with John, see a pack, and try one on. And I was pretty impressed with the overall design that him and Andy, the other owner of Palante, had come up with. But at the same time, I didn't have like a dire need to switch out of my Hyperlight. Up until that point, the Hyperlight was performing just fine. So I was kind of torn, but eventually I decided to get the Palante because I was curious to see if I could make it work and take it with me all the way to Canada.
One eternity later.
All right, so here is the pack. This is the 18-inch torso length. It's made mostly of this X-Pack material here, which is waterproof, but the inseams are not taped, so the pack itself is not waterproof. Either use a trash liner inside the pack or pack cover or something. The pack doesn't have a frame, and it doesn't have a hip belt. And I believe it weighs right under 14 ounces. All right, so I guess I will start with this main pocket right here. As you can see, it is extremely see-through, very stretchy. I love the fact that it's so see-through because it's a big pocket, so there's a lot of stuff going on in here, and I really want to be able to easily find things like my headlamp, gloves, something that I need kind of quickly. As far as durability, it has never ripped on me, and I don't necessarily baby my gear either, so I love that. I don't know. Next, we'll talk about the water bottle pocket. So there's one here, and then one on the other side. I don't really have anything there right now. I have a wide water bottle, 1 liter, and then one of the smaller or thinner smart water bottles. You'd easily be able to fit 2 of these, but with the thicker liter bottle, you could also fit like that. Next, I want to show you guys these 2 shoulder strap pockets here, made of the same mesh as that other big pocket in the front. I love these pockets. They're truly a game changer when it comes to thru hiking. So you could fit a bunch of little things in here like headphones, chapstick, a couple bars in there, sunglasses here. Typically I'd carry my phone here, but I'm recording with my phone right now. And when I was actually hiking the PCT, I had my point and shoot Sony camera in the other pocket, and it fit perfectly, even with like extra room to fit other little things. And so last but not least, this fancy bottom here. This thing is like a pouch where you could slide your hand in and out very easily as you're hiking. And it's big enough where you could fit your entire day's worth of food in here. I like to keep all my day's worth of food except for dinner in there. Like I even had like bagels in here with avocados and stuff. And what's really cool about the other side of it is that it's got this tiny little hole, and that's where I would shove all my wrappers in as I'm hiking. It's such a small little detail, but it made a huge difference. I always had wrappers either just like flying away or just getting in the way of my other like pockets when I had my other pack. But this one stashes them in there and then you never see them again. But you should remember to take them out when you get to town. And just like with the other materials, this has never ripped on me either, which is kind of surprising because the pack is constantly sitting like that on it. So yeah, it's pretty bomb. And so then in the very top, you have this strap here that kind of holds the pack closed. So for the purposes of this video, there are 4 days worth of food in here. So that actually leads me to the next question. I'm gonna put this guy over here. Yeah, so that actually leads me to the next question, which is about load capacity. So with 4 days worth of food in the pack, plus 3 liters of water, and all my PCT gear, I weighed it in the bathroom, and it's like just under 19 pounds. At that weight, I would say that that's reaching its max as far as comfort goes. Basically any more than 20 pounds, and it would just be super not fun. At least in my experience. They also asked if I ever had to compromise on food. So it definitely made me think of the types of food that I was carrying on any given stretch. On longer stretches, let's say 5 or more days, I would choose lighter foods. So for example, I'd choose more Nature Valley bars as opposed to Pro bars, which are a lot denser and heavier. And then avocados, instead of carrying 1 avocado for each day that I'd be on trail, I would carry 2 or something like that and like split them between the days. So little things like that. And I need to drink some water. And so even though this may seem like pretty common sense, I feel like if you're not super focused when you're in town resupplying, it's very easy to overpack, and it happened to me countless times. Maybe I can talk more about these types of foods and just my overall approach to resupplying in a more updated video. Let me know in the comments if you are interested in that. And then as far as actually limiting the amount of food that I'm carrying out in favor of comfort, I really just try not to do this in general unless I really have to. So for example, a long stretch, 5 or more days, but also a stretch where there's not a ton of water and I have to carry like 3 liters of water at all times. I can't imagine this being too big of a problem on the PCT desert, only because there are a lot of towns on that stretch. And there's also quite a bit of water catches that are maintained by volunteers. And now you don't want to rely on these, but when it came to my experience on the trail, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So if you just monitor the water report carefully and you get good at managing your water consumption in general, I don't see how you couldn't make it work. As far as the Sierra goes, again, if you take advantage of the few resupply points that do exist in this stretch, along with the fact that that stretch actually does have a ton of water, I don't see how you couldn't make it work either, even with all the added Sierra gear that you're required to carry, unfortunately. Which leads me to the next question, which is about Sierra setups. So I can't personally speak to that because I didn't have the Palante pack for that stretch. I had my Hyperlight, but John does have a video on the Palante pack's YouTube channel where he demos a Bear Vault 450 with the simple pack. So you can go ahead and check that out. If I had to hike the Sierra again or any other place that required a bear canister, I think I would probably use the Bear Vault 450 either way. Sierra setups are just way too heavy. I kind of wish I had a hip belt for that. So that leads me to the next question. So this question is kind of tricky for me because I really do like the idea of having a stashable hip belt. That would be really nice. But I don't think that the V2 has that much extra volume than the Simple does. And I feel like overall, a lot of the volume that the V2 has is all kind of at the top, so that's why it's got that V shape as opposed to being evenly distributed throughout the pack, kind of like the Simple. So when I did try on the V2 briefly last year, it felt like it was pretty top heavy, if that makes sense. This is kind of hard to explain. And so if you're not wanting that top heaviness and you're utilizing this space up until that point and then you're just rolling down the top area, then like all that extra volume is wasted, in my opinion. To be fair, I did try on the 16-inch torso, which in hindsight was a pretty small size for me. I should have gone up to the 19-inch, and I think that it would have made the entire pack feel a lot different. With that said, the V2 is definitely an improvement compared to the Simple when it comes to overall durability of the materials. And then they also added more reinforcement to the stitching of the pack. And that leads me to the next topic, which is what I didn't like about the Simple pack. In mid-Washington, I went to go ahead and put my pack on after a fresh resupply, so just leaving town and getting back on trail. I was stepping on the bottom of the shoulder strap, so on the webbing, and didn't realize it. So when I went to pull the pack, it like ripped the stitching where the shoulder strap meets the back of the pack. It wasn't a huge issue though, because the pack still functioned and I actually hiked with it like that all the way to Canada and it didn't fall apart. Eventually I did get the pack replaced because I needed it to go on some other hikes, but one of the straps on that new pack fell out. So that was kind of weird. Then I got another pack, and Palante has been pretty accommodating and responsive when it comes to that. So the other thing I'm not crazy about the Simple pack is the shoulder straps. So they're very wide and kind of stiff. And compared to my Hyperlight pack, the straps are very close together, whereas on the Hyperlight, they're kind of far apart. I don't know if this has anything to do with overall comfort or not, but I do feel like when I put on the pack, it tends to want to like stay very close to my neck, and I always try to push them apart as best as I could because that feels the most comfortable for me. That's why I removed the sternum strap on the pack. I might as well show you guys what I'm talking about. I just feel like, I don't know, they're like on the wider side. So I'm always like carrying them like this. Otherwise it would just be like this if I had a sternum strap. That could also just be like my smaller frame. So yeah, I just wonder if maybe exploring the shoulder straps and just like the overall design would be an improvement in comfort at all. So someone on Instagram asked if the pack takes the weight off your shoulders. And the answer is no, because that's kind of where all the weight is. but those muscles do adapt over time, and it's not really so much the shoulders where I felt it. It's kind of like the back of the neck at the base between your shoulder blades, that upper back area. So that's kind of why I feel like if maybe playing around with the design of the straps and the placement of the straps would have an improvement on that. So a few tips that I've tried that I had to incorporate a lot at the beginning when I was first getting used to the pack, and these are kind of things that you can incorporate with any pack, even one with a hip belt, was playing around with the length of the shoulder straps. So when I'm going uphill, especially when it's like a long gradual climb, I like to keep the straps nice and long so that the pack is sitting kind of lower on my back. And then the opposite, when I'm going downhill, I like to keep the straps tighter and have the pack higher up. I like to also listen to my body, so when I'm having like an acute pain back there, I stop, even if it's just for a minute or two. I find a tree and just like go like that and just like stretch. So that tends to work almost instantly. I do have to keep doing it over and over again throughout the day, every time that I feel that pain. And yeah, it's manageable. One last little tip is whenever I'm hiking, I like to look straight ahead, like to the horizon, as opposed to staring down at my feet or at the trail, because without realizing it, you're just putting that much more extra strain on the base of your neck and like your upper back area. I also feel like when I am looking straight ahead, I feel like I'm going faster too. It just helps me keep a steadier pace, so that's pretty cool. So with all of that said, this pack is definitely not for everyone. It's actually for no one because I don't even make it anymore. But if you're curious about the V2 or any other minimal pack, especially one that doesn't have a hip belt, I think the most important advice would be to ideally get your base weight under 10 pounds. Overall, I really like not having a hip belt. It has made me realize that my mobility has gotten better when it comes to hiking. I feel like I'm freer to move about. But more importantly than that, having such a minimal pack without a hip belt has forced me to be mindful about how much stuff I pack, which ultimately has led to having less low back pain. A lot of this just comes from experience, just going out there, trying new things, being open to the possibility of carrying less and what that feels like. And for me, it feels pretty empowering to go out there and not only survive, but have fun with so little on my back. This process and mindset has definitely been something that I've incorporated a lot more in my life, and it feels pretty cool. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up because it's like an hour long. I hope that you got something from this video. I wanted to show you what's in my pack and like how I pack my pack, but this video is too long. Thank you guys so much for watching and for being patient with my videos. I'm actually pretty excited because I just picked up this guy and this guy. And I'm not sure about this guy because he's kind of heavy. So I'm testing him out, but this is definitely going to be a game changer so I can make more videos outside.